What if you discovered a way to erase tomorrow, to stop the pain before it even happens? Would you dare to use it? Ethan Cross never imagined his life would matter in the grand scheme of things. He was just a man behind the counter of an antique shop, surrounded by dusty clocks and forgotten trinkets. The days came and went, marked only by the steady ticking of pendulums on the walls. Yet sometimes, the most ordinary lives hide the most extraordinary destinies. The turning point came on a rainy Thursday evening. A storm raged outside, rattling the windows, when a stack of old boxes collapsed in the basement. Ethan went down to clean the mess, grumbling at the inconvenience. But behind the fallen boxes, he found something strange. A false wall. Its wood splintered just enough to reveal a hidden cavity. Inside was a book. Not just any book, a thick leather-bound journal, cracked with age, its cover marked with a peculiar symbol. An hourglass, split perfectly down the middle. Ethan frowned. He should have tossed it aside, but curiosity gnawed at him. He opened the first page, expecting to find the scribbles of some eccentric collector. Instead, he found dates. Not from the past, but from the future. Each entry described the events of the following day. They were written in sharp, deliberate handwriting, every detail exact. Ethan laughed, shaking his head. Some strange attempt at a fortune-telling diary, he thought, but then his eyes froze on tomorrow's entry. A child will be struck by a car outside the shop at 4:17 p.m. His stomach turned. He closed the book quickly, almost angrily, refusing to give it power. Yet when the next day came, he couldn't resist watching the street. At 4:17 p.m., the clock chimed. A boy darted into the road, chasing a ball. A car sped around the corner. Ethan didn't think. He bolted outside, his heart pounding, and yanked the boy back just in time. Tires screeched, the car swerved, and the child's terrified cry turned into a sob of relief. Ethan collapsed onto the curb, gasping. The journal was real. From that day forward, his life became a storm of impossible choices. Every night a new page appeared. Every morning he carried the unbearable burden of knowing what was to come. Fires in apartment blocks, a woman choking in a cafe, a young man slipping on the train tracks. He tried to intervene each time, and sometimes he succeeded. He pulled people from flames, shouted warnings, shoved strangers out of harm's way. Each rescue filled him with a strange mix of triumph and dread. Because each time he looked back at the journal, the words had shifted. The ink seemed to pulse, rewriting itself. Small changes rippled outward. He began to notice subtle differences in the world around him. A newspaper headline slightly altered, a neighbor who no longer recognized him, a photograph in the shop showing people he had never met, and the dreams. Oh, the dreams. Every night Ethan dreamt of shadows, versions of himself older, broken, whispering warnings. You cannot win, they said. Every life saved is another stolen. The debt will come due. But he ignored them. He had become addicted to the power, addicted to saving lives, addicted to being needed. Until the night everything changed. The page was darker than usual, as though the ink itself bled into the parchment. And for the first time, the words tore into his own soul. Ethan Cross dies tomorrow at 11:59 p.m. He read it over and over, his pulse racing. He slammed the book shut, threw it across the room, and pressed his hands into his face. This couldn't be happening. He was the one who read the warnings, the one who prevented disasters. How could he prevent his own? The next day, paranoia consumed him. He avoided leaving the shop. He unplugged appliances, locked the doors, and refused to speak to customers. Every sound made him flinch. Every shadow looked like a threat. Minutes crawled into hours, until at last the clock neared midnight. His chest was tight with fear. He sat frozen, clutching a knife from the counter as if it could protect him. 11:59. The lights flickered. The mirror on the far wall rippled as though it were made of water. And then a figure stepped through. It was Ethan, but older, scarred. His eyes were hollow, his face twisted with despair. He moved like a shadow made flesh, his voice ragged. You cannot erase tomorrow without erasing yourself, the reflection whispered. We are the debt. Ethan stumbled backward, terror clawing at his throat. No, I saved them. I saved so many. The reflection's expression was both pity and rage. And you condemned others. You thought the journal was a gift, but it was a cage, a trap built by time itself. Every word you read, every action you took, pulled you closer to me. The glass shattered. Darkness engulfed him. When Ethan opened his eyes, he was standing in a world that felt both infinite and broken. Streets looped into themselves. Buildings stood half-formed, their windows melting into the air. People flickered like ghosts, frozen mid-motion. And in the center of it all was a colossal library stretching beyond the horizon. The shelves were filled with journals, thousands, millions, each one identical to his. A voice echoed through the endless halls. Welcome to the archive of tomorrow. Ethan staggered forward, pulling journals from the shelves. Each bore the name of someone he had known, neighbors, strangers, even the boy he had saved. Their lives were written in excruciating detail, their futures mapped out. But as he read, he realized something horrifying. His interventions had left scars. Some lives ended sooner than they should have. Others twisted into pain. His attempt to cheat tomorrow had unraveled countless destinies. The voice spoke again. Every tomorrow you tried to erase has been stored here. You cannot destroy them. You can only choose. Then he saw it. A single journal resting on a pedestal, glowing faintly. Its cover was blank. With trembling hands, he opened it. Inside was only one sentence. You must decide. Will you accept tomorrow or erase it forever? His mind reeled. He thought of the child he saved, the faces of those who had lived because of him. But he also thought of the cracks in reality, the friends who no longer remembered him, the neighbors who had vanished, the older, broken version of himself in the mirror. He dropped to his knees, sobbing. For the first time, he understood the truth. Tomorrow isn't meant to be known. The pain, the loss, the joy, the hope, they all exist because of uncertainty. Without it, life is not life at all. Ethan stood slowly, tears burning his cheeks. He whispered into the silence, I accept tomorrow. The library trembled, the shelves cracked, light erupted, consuming everything. When he opened his eyes again, he was back in the antique shop. The clocks ticked steadily. Outside, life went on as though nothing had happened. The journal lay on the counter. Its pages were blank. For the first time in months, Ethan smiled. Not because he had conquered time, but because he had surrendered to it. And in that surrender, he finally understood. Sometimes the greatest act of courage is not erasing tomorrow, but facing it. Because tomorrow, with all its pain and all its promise, is the very thing that makes us human.